And joining me now, SABC's reporter on foreign affairs, Kailihle Kumalo, is in studio. Good morning. So it's been a busy week regarding these binational cooperation meetings. But of course, today, particularly important, given the number of Zimbabweans in South Africa and, of course, just the proximity and interlinkedness of the two countries, Kaya.
Well, very much so, Sakina, and of course the geographic proximity, but also a very thorny issue. I mean, just in the back of the ANC policy conference, the International Relations Unit was very clear that it's right in the interest of South Africa to make sure that there is economic stability in Zimbabwe, there is peace in Zimbabwe, and South Africa has always been working with its neighbor in terms of making sure that things are well run in Zimbabwe, of course respecting their sovereignty. And today is going to be that opportunity to elevate these diplomatic ties, making sure that they do work together, especially because these are very hard economic times with COVID-19, with the conflict in Ukraine, having the ramifications across the globe, and these are economies that have been battered as well.
So do we know what items are on the agenda specifically for today's meeting?
Yeah, so for example, issues are around trade relations. It's going to be a very central theme. But apart from that, Sakina, so this is in preparation for the Binational Commission to be held later this year, once again demonstrating a very closeness between Pretoria and Harare in terms of the work that they do have. You have quite a significant number of South African companies working in Zimbabwe, playing a very pivotal role in terms of making sure that that country, you know, its economy is well run, so to speak.
So, Kaya, obviously much talk around the permits for Zimbabwean nationals in South Africa. Do we know that that particular matter will be broached as well?
Very much so, Sakina, especially because for some Zimbabwean nationals here in South Africa, it's been a very contentious issue how they've been appealing to the South African government to reverse that cabinet decision to discontinue the special permit, because a lot of them, they're in limbo. They're not sure where to go, especially because we do know of the numerous challenges facing the country's immigration system. So when they're subjected to the normal course of applying for the visa, there's a great deal of trepidation and fear as to where will they end up with all these challenges. So, and we do know that there's still a court process to try and challenge that particular move. So undoubtedly the two ministers will have to look into this issue. It is a very thorny issue, especially also because of the illegal migration as well. We do know of the challenges facing the Beit Bridge, the concerns, you know, how the Home Affairs Department has been trying to overhaul the system, how they've been trying to beef up the border security through, you know, the management in terms of the border security. It's going to be really key issues that two leaders will have to look into.
And I suppose the broader public would want to know, do we expect any major shifts? Will there be, you know, seismic developments along these lines, given some of these very pivotal issues between South Africa and, of course, Zimbabwe? And many South African citizens, of course, will put into that basket, hopefully to be on the agenda, the question of a crime. You know, you talk about the border situation, illegal immigration, but also just the illicit flow of goods between the two countries along those porous borders. So is that something that will be addressed, do you think?
Very pertinent issues, Sakina, but of course, I mean, we'll have to wait and see, because from time to time you do have the leaders coming and committing to certain decisions. Oftentimes, implementation-wise, it's always a great challenge. And obviously, I mean, also, something that was very patently clear, once again referring to the ANC policy conference, you know, Lindiwe Zulu was talking about the fact that it is a very big concern, you know, the xenophobic sentiment that we do from time to time. We see in South Africa saying it's not in the interest of South Africa, but also calling for the law enforcement agencies to address all these issues so that we don't have this hostility between the South Africans and some Zimbabwean nationals, but also so that we don't see a blanket accusation and approach that is painting everyone with the same brush, saying that those who are committing the wrongdoings should be held accountable. And in fact, that's what has been a position of a number of ministers in Zimbabwe. They are foreign affairs ministers. They've always been clear. Their ambassador here in South Africa as well, saying that anyone who's doing any wrongdoing, violating South African laws, should be brought to book, because, I mean, that's not in keeping with a good neighbor's spirit. And
just finally, speaking of good neighborliness, and you touched earlier on respecting the sovereignty of Zimbabwe, what is South Africa, what is Pretoria's approach to this particular situation, given what we've seen being reported, given the influx of Zimbabwean migrants into South Africa for one reason or another? Are we still on quiet diplomacy as far as Zimbabwe is concerned?
I think there's a bit of quiet diplomacy that is still in existence, because, you know, whenever you talk to South Africa's diplomat, there's always that sentiment that, you know, we don't want to be seen as a dominant player. So whenever we try and intervene, it's all in the spirit of saying it's for the greater good. A very clear-cut example, what we have in Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado, the deployment of the soldiers from South Africa. It's a good neighbor saying it's about making sure that the SADC region is well secured. So there's a very similar spirit as well in Zimbabwe, that this is just for SADC region. So whenever we come, the situation in Eswatini as well, it's a very similar approach of saying that we're just not coming to dominate in your sphere, but it's for us saying that for SADC to thrive, all of us should be well secured and very stable in our spaces.
Well, Kylie Kumalo, as you make your way to Pretoria, we'll catch up with you later on. And please stay tuned to SABC News for more on the developments around this particular engagement.